Hi everybody, and welcome to my studio. My name is Lonna and I am an acrylic artist. Thanks for stopping by. I am here to show you what we are going to be painting on this video. What we're painting today is near and dear to my heart. It's my favorite subject to paint. So let's take a look. Fruit. I love to paint fruit. It just I just really enjoy it. I really like taking just flat layers of paint and building them up to make them look like you could reach in there and grab that piece of fruit and eat it. This one is my plums and cherries, but I have titled it Farm Fresh Fruit. And it was many layers, well not many, but a few layers on the plum itself. We did some dry brushing on it and some glazing on it, and what a fun thing to paint. I just love it. I cannot even begin to tell you how much I love to paint fruit. My absolute favorite subject. So this is painted on my tavern sign, which this is what it looks like on my website. You can purchase it on my website, but you can certainly paint it on any surface that you like or that you have. And I used my fresh egg stencil. I used the words up here at the top, the farmer's market words, and stenciled them across the top. But again, you can use whatever stencil you have or leave the words completely off. I think the words really help make the design. So, and then you'll need a sponge to do a little bit of sponging on the edges, because you just cannot get this effect with a paintbrush. It needs to be done with a sponge. So I use one of my artist sponges on that. But this design, just what a pleasure to paint. And I hope that you are going to really enjoy painting it with me. Grab some paintbrushes, everybody, and let's get started on this awesome, fun design. Alright, I have got my base coat on this surface here, and I first applied a coat of multi-purpose sealer with a dampened 2-inch foam roller, and then applied 2 coats of morning mist with the same dampened foam roller. I didn't even need to wash the multi-purpose sealer out, just went straight into the paint with this color. So now we're going to mix a little bit of morning mist. Let me shake it up here. And a tiny little bit of lamp black. We want to make a just slightly darker color than what we've got. Grab my palette knife here. So I'm going to put a little bit of morning mist here. We don't need very much of this. This is just to do our stenciling and our background. So I'm just going to put a little bit out here and mix a little bit up that I can load into my stencil brush. So this is our base coat color in the background. I'm going to get just a tiny little bit of black and mix that in there and see how that darkens it up. I'm going to get a little bit more in there. I want this to be kind of subtle in the background. So that looks pretty good to me. That is much darker than that. I'm not sure it's going to be dark enough, so I'm going to test it out with my stencil. So my stencil that I'm going to be using, I think, is this one. This is my Farmer's Market stencil for my fresh eggs design that I did last year, I think. So I'm going to line it up right here where it looks like it's in that hump right there. I'm going to do some kind of scroll work or something up there on the top. I'm going to grab a piece of tape so I can hold this in place and make sure it doesn't move. And then we're going to stencil with a stencil brush or a makeup sponge, whatever is best for you. And actually, I think I'll get my smaller stencil brush here. So I was going to use my 1/2 inch one, but I think I'll use my 3/8 inch one. And I'm going to load it up with my paint and work that paint up into that brush. Got it loaded up in there. I'm going to offload just a little bit, and then I'm going to come and begin gently making some swirling. My paintbrush is straight up and down, and we're going to swirl. I'm going to lift it and see if that's the look I'm going for. I think I want it to be just a touch darker, so I'm going to add a little bit. Maybe I'll add some darker purple in there. I don't want this to turn black. I want it to stay a purpley color. And I don't know if this is going to work out for me or not. I'll take a little bit. This is royal purple. Mix that in there. Still a little bit of black. A little bit more purple. This is royal purple and a little bit of black. Looks a little bit dark, a little bit more dark purple than the first paint that I started with. So I'm going to go over here and do this letter. Very gently, I'm going in circular motions. And yeah, I like that one a little bit better because it's got a little bit more purple in it. So that's the one I'm going to go with. So I'm going to apply that on here. Very gentle pressure. I don't want to make my stencil lift up anywhere. So circular motions. Don't have too much paint on your brush, or you'll get some gloppy stuff that may want to find its way underneath your stencil. So let's see how that's looking. That looks pretty good. And then we're also going to do the word market. Again, soft circular motions here. I'm not scrubbing or doing anything hard or putting a lot of pressure here. Do another layer. I want to make sure I fill up the whole letter. That's why I go twice, because I want to make sure none of the letter is left undone. So we've got Farmer's Market. I think that looks really good. And that was a mix of our Morning Mist, a little bit of royal purple, and a little bit of black, just to make a color that it's kind of muted, but not super muted for the background there. So we are going to now put our design on here. So I'm going to get it onto tracing paper, tape it on here, put my gray or white graphite paper, either one will do. I will use gray so that you can see the lines, and then we're going to come back and start painting on this one, getting some base coats and stuff on. Okay, I've got my pattern on here, and one tip I wanted to give you when you're doing circles like this is just use a circle template so you get your circles nice and uniform, and you don't have to worry about them being misshapen or anything like that. Okay, the plum, I think we're going to start the plum out with Lilac Meadow. We're going to start with a light color and work our way up, and that's for the skin on the plums. I need to look at my pattern here. Okay, I'm shaking it up because it needs a little shaking. So we're starting out with Lilac Meadow, and we will build on top of that color So let me grab a flat brush here. And we'll start base coating these in. And you'll want to apply 2 coats on here. I'm going to go up to my line, but I'm not going to paint on the line, or try not to paint on the line. That way I can come back and erase it. Now this one here in the center, I will probably end up painting over it, but the outside lines here, which I have traced on rather darkly, I will erase those. So I'm going to just take my paint right up to that line, but not onto it, because once you put paint on that graphite, it is not coming off. It's set in your project, and especially if your lines are really dark like I have my lines here, you don't want to go over those lines, because then you won't be happy at all with them in your project, unless you are using some really dark colors or lots of layers. It's really hard to get those graphite lines covered up. So you want to try and not go over them after we apply our first coat here, and go in and remove those graphite lines. Then we can adjust any other lines that we need to and bring them up to meet things when we put our second coat on. Right in here we're going to want a little bit of this color. This will stay a little bit lighter in through here. And just remember, any graphite line you get paint on, so I got a little bit of paint right on there, so that won't come off. Okay, and then the this one here, we'll put a coat on it. I am going to go, well, maybe not. This is not shaped right here, so after I remove the graphite line, I want to make sure I adjust that line right there. And something about this bottom of this plum doesn't quite look right. And then of course this color will also come around this outer edge a little bit. So I'm just going to keep using this same brush here, rotate my piece, and I'm going to remain on the flat edge, but you can go to a round brush and do this, and we just want to put a line around here, and this is where I will probably end up getting on the graphite line, and I did. So I'll just work through that and not stress out about it. I mean, what's done is done. So from there I'll just try and work out. My table has been moved and my camera has been adjusted, but I got to keep remembering I have to have it back farther away from me when I'm painting here. Okay, so it stays on camera shot. The cherries here, we're going to paint those in with, I have some Cad Red here. Let's see if I have a Cad Red. I thought I had a bottle that was open, but I don't, so I'll open this new bottle here. Bottle opener. Maybe. Okay, I finally got the plastic off of the bottle. This paint in this one was a little bit thick. So we're going to paint these in with some Cad Red. Just follow your circle very carefully. If you stay inside the lines on your circle won't grow. You can come in and erase those lines later, and you'll have a nice circle for your cherries here. And we are going to apply 2 coats on all of our elements here. misting bottle out. It's over in my drawer. I gotta go get it. And then we're going to base coat in the leaves. I will go off camera and do all of the second coats so that when we come back we'll be ready to paint. Most of you know, fruit is my favorite thing to paint. I love it. I love painting fruit. It's just my favorite. Stay just inside your line. Try and keep the distance that you get all the way around about the same up to the line. And then our second coats, we will fill in any gaps where we erase lines. Now this area here inside the opened half-cut plum, we are going to put moon yellow in there. Moon yellow. So that's going to be the color going in there. A little bit too much water in my brush. My paint was a little thick, so I added some water, but that was just a little bit too much water. We're going to keep this yellow for now. I think I actually might add a little bit of white to that because that's a little bit darker yellow than I want to start out with. So I'm going to take my yellow and mix a little bit of white in there. Tone that down. I'll definitely do it more on the second coat. I just want a nice pale yellow in here to start with. So that's pretty dark, so we definitely want to tone that down with some white. So my second coat will definitely have some white mixed in there to really bring that down to a more muted color. Alright, our leaves. I'm going to try a new color for my leaves. You know, I'm a person who likes specific colors and things for leaves and things, but I thought I'm going to try. So my paint came off there. I must have touched it or something. So I'm going to try this green tree color. I don't know if it's going to work for me or not, but we are definitely going to give it a shot. It's a brighter green. I'm sure I've used it on a project before, but I don't really recall how transparent it is. It looks a little transparent. So I'll have to maybe do 3 layers of paint on here. I know all these colors look pretty bright right now. And we're painting right over our word market, but that's okay. I think we can figure out what that word is. Okay, and the smaller leaves will be, we'll just paint them the same color. And then our stem on this one, I'm not going to worry about the stem on the cherries yet, but the stem on the plum, we will paint with, let's see, I've got milk chocolate, but I already know it's going to be way too dark. Let me grab a small round here. So, I'm going to add just a little bit of white to it. And make it like a light milk chocolate. So I've added just a little bit of white, almost taking it to the color cocoa, but we don't need to get another color of paint out. We got plenty of paint here that we can mix together to make the colors that we need. Okay, so that's the stem. And then these 3 leaves down here will also be this green, and again you'll want 2 coats, possibly 3 coats on your leaves. And after this first base coat dries, that's when I want you to go in and erase your graphite lines. And then when you apply your second base coat, you can get fill in all those gaps where the graphite line may have left an open space. So for instance, let me just show you for instance real quick. Right here, I'll erase that graphite line. So now we have this area right here that has no paint on it. And the same here, if I erase this, there'll be no paint on this area in here. So that's when we'll fill in and adjust with our second coats. So I'm going to get all of my first coats dry, get my graphite lines erased, except for my stem line here and this line here. Every other line should be erased. And then we'll come back and start adding detail. Okay, we're going to start adding some more color onto this now. I've erased all my graphite lines and I transferred on the lines that I felt like I needed. Actually, I just drew them back on, but in your case, you may want to transfer them. So now we're going to start with the color Purple Rain. It's not as dark as Royal Purple. And we're going to side load for a float. And that means you use a damp brush. You load paint on the corner. Use whatever is your favorite floating brush. You load paint on one corner and you work it in. I like to work it in until it's a nice soft color on my palette here. How it looks on my palette, that's how it's going to paint for me. So just always be aware of that. And we're going to start applying a little bit of color onto our plum here. Now I always touch my paper towel before I come to my surface here. And let me grab a mop brush. And I'm going to mop that just a little bit, kind of smooth that out. Very, very, very gently. I got a bristle in there, but I'm going to take care of that when the paint dries. If I try to remove it right now, I'll just remove the paint with it. So right now we're just going around this half a plum right here with our Purple Rain. I'm just going to very easily come into that paint right there because it might still be wet. And then just come and kind of smooth this a little bit. And mop brush it wherever I put my mop brush. That's not even my regular mop brush, so I need to get my good mop brush. See, I already dug a hole in the paint right there. And so right there, that's super dark. It's like a hard line. I do not like that one bit. So I'm going to dampen all that right there. And take my eraser and erase that paint off of there because I don't like it. It's too much. And the good thing is about the background on this is if you get out of lines on the background and got something on there you don't like, you can touch it up at the end and clean up your background. Because right there I got a little bit of paint outside. Okay, so you can only erase if the paint is not cured, so always be aware of that. So I'm going to reload here and try this again. Touch my paper towel to remove a little bit of the excess paint. And come around that again. And this time I can mop it to soften it. shape that a little bit. You want to come along this center area here. This is where the dark part of the plum is. And my mop brush, and very gently mop that. We're going to also put some of this color down in here. I'm just going to put some down in there. I'm not going to worry too much about how that particularly looks right now, because we'll be doing a lot of other stuff. I want to go along this edge here a little bit, around that cherry, and work it out. And very gently mop to soften. Now I like to use a mop brush. If you do not like to use a mop brush, you don't have to use a mop brush, but for me it helps soften out things when I get a little bit too much of something. Alright, so we got a little bit of shading started on that one. Let's put a little bit of shading on this one. We want to allow the paint on this bigger one to start drying now. So we're going to go down here at the bottom. I need a lot more water in my brush here. My paint's not wanting to move, and that's never a good thing. Bring it up this way just a little bit more around that cherry. I want to have a little bit of a highlight going on there. Okay, and we will definitely darken along this edge, but I'm going to wait till we get the inside of that finished, which I did not transfer on that line, so I am just going to draw it in real quick. This is just like an opening here, and you probably won't be able to see it with that color, so I'm going to go with a different color. Not that one. This one. This is pink. We'll be using a little bit of pinky orange stuff in here, so I'm just going to draw it on with pink. So we are coming down from the center here, on both ends. Okay. And then we're just going to create this opening that joins from that one to that one. That's where the pit sits. You can also draw this in here with some watercolor pencils if you forgot to transfer it on, but so that's where the pit was inside the plum. Okay, so we'll need that line in there for later. Okay, so we're going to get ready to add some darkening purple on here. Alright, let's add a second layer of this same color on here in the same places. We're going to walk it out a little bit, so that means we're going to bring it out into the plum more. So if you need to go ahead and pre-dampen that with some water, then let's do that. And we're going to load our brush up. And we're going to apply a second layer on here and walk it out into the plum. And I'm going to mop that choppy mess right there. So we brought that color a little bit more out into the plum. We're going to do the same thing over here. We want to bring it up more. So if you need to dampen that area, if you're not good at walking out, ooh, that's a lot of water. I don't want that much water. Just put a light little bit of water on there and that will help you. But if your brush is loaded properly, walking out shouldn't be a problem because you're laying down water with one edge of the brush and paint with the other. And so it all just kind of flows together. And I got that a little bit more sheer than what I wanted. So I'll probably come back and do that one again. A bit of a hard line here, so I'm going to take the water edge of the brush and just soften that. And then the mop brush to smooth it out. Okay. Let's go down here to this little guy. A little bit more water in my brush. Maybe not quite that much. I think I just diluted all my paint there. Okay, I want to go back along this edge here. More water. Alright, that looks pretty good. Smooth this out just a little bit down here. You have to make sure the previous layer that you put on is dry, because if you do something like this and your paint's not dry, you're just going to immediately lift that paint off of there and you'll be so sad. So make sure your layers of paint are dry before you go and add another one on there. Alright, I'm going to come back around this one because I felt like I had way too much water in my brush. I'm going to grab a little bit more paint. And I want to bring it out into that plum a little bit more. Bring it up on the plum. And now I'll mop all that choppy stuff. Just by gently tapping it, and that's going to kind of smooth out all those lines that are in there. You don't want to do too hard or play around in one spot with a mop brush because you will just dig a hole right in your paint. A little bit of a hard line right there. My little eraser and erase that a little bit. Come back with a little bit of paint and smooth that out. Okay, I feel like I still need a little bit of this color through here, so I'm just going to tap some of this in here. I've got water on one edge. I'm still loaded for a float, but I'm only putting it right there. I'm going to work this edge, the water edge, out real quick and then come down here. This edge was a lot heavier. Work that in there just a little bit. And now I'm going to let it dry because I feel like the layers are not very dry yet. I want to shape this edge up a little bit. pull that up just, oops, you weren't on camera. I'm just shaping this edge right here. And I brought it up this way, and I'm just bringing my finger and smoothing that out and kind of bringing it around the back edge of that plum right there. Don't be afraid to use your fingers. Fingers are an excellent tool for softening things and smoothing out colors. Now down here, it's dry. It definitely needs more paint. I know we're going to be darkening with a darker shade here in a minute, but I want a little bit more of this purple going on down here. Okay, that looks a little bit better. I think I'm happy with that. So that was our second layer of that same color, royal purple. Okay, let's have a little bit of fun on this plum right here. I'm going to take a scruffy type brush, and we are going to load it dry with some turquoise, and then I'm going to offload onto a paper towel, kind of work it into the bristles there, but remove some of the paint out of the brush. And we're going to start applying some of this color in our plum. Some fun turquoise touches on here. Just scrub them in there. Use whatever kind of scruffy brush that you like to use. I'm going to put a little bit on this half a plum here. I'm just going to go right back here to this spot and pick up a little bit of paint. This is with turquoise. Okay, we're going to use several of these scruffy brushes, so if you don't have very many, make sure you have some hand sanitizer on hand so that you can clean them out when we're done with specific colors. I grabbed another one, and I'm going to load that royal purple that I shaded with into my brush. And we're going to work that shading out just a little bit. This is another way for people who have difficulty floating. You can dry brush that out just a little bit and soften it and smooth it and blend it. Oh, and you probably like to be on the camera shot. I'm not used to having my thing so far away from me, so I'm getting off camera, so I do apologize for that. So you just load a dry brush, offload onto a dry paper towel, and now I just come and I very lightly begin just kind of scrubbing it on there. Because I don't know how much paint is in there, how much is going to come off right at first, and I don't want too much paint to come off too quick. Your small one shouldn't be too much of an issue when you floated because it's not a huge area, but in case it is, you can put a little bit of this on there. And it can blend right over a little bit into that turquoise. And we're going to start adding some extra dimension into our plum here. We're getting some nice color in there now. It's looking good. Bristle out of there. They are looking very good. Okay, I think I'm going to add just a little bit more turquoise on here. As we add some more glazes and stuff on here, this turquoise is going to really push back in there a little bit. And then I've got another scruffy brush. This one's just a round domed brush. This one's a little bit more stiff. And I'm going to load it with some white paint and offload it. going to put some of this white in here. You know how plums look. Just tap a little and kind of scrub a little. This is all a layering process. Got to get through all those ugly stages before we can get into some beautiful stages. Let's put a little bit over here on this one. Okay. I am going to wipe the paint out of this brush. I don't know if I'm going to need it again here in a minute. Well, actually, I think I'll just go ahead and wash it out because this brush is a little bit hard to get the paint out of once it dries in there. So I'm just going to wash it out. And now we're going to start adding some deeper colors onto our plums here, so we can really bring out some of that beautiful plum color. So let's add our royal purple out on our palette. It's the color that we mixed into our letters back here. And we are going to side load for a float. Let me spritz my palette with some water. Wake up my brush. I haven't used this brush yet today, so I'm going to wake it up. Alright, we're going to load that, what do we got, royal purple. And we'll start with this as a darkening color, and then we'll probably add a little bit of black to it to make it like a black plum. Excuse me. Excuse me. If you have a black plum, then you can certainly just pull that color out, but we can mix a nice black plum color with royal purple and some black. So we're going to start down here at the bottom. And bring that around, kind of walk it out a little bit. It won't come out as far as the previous color did. Some more. I have to reshape that cherry or something right there. It doesn't quite look right. Part here. This area up here is going to be, I'd probably like to be on camera, this area right here is going to be really dark right there. Bit of this down. We need to really shape that edge right there. Oops. And I use my finger just a little bit too wide, so I'll just take my damp brush and clean that up. I'm not too worried about getting outside the lines because, like I said, our background is just a basic flat color. Nothing mixed or special in there, so we don't have to worry too much about getting it in the background. Add some to our half plum down here now. It's really going to be dark down here. So I'm going to put a little bit of this down here. Kind of scoot it along that edge right there. Pat that out just a little bit. We'll work on that edge when we get there. But right now we're not there. So I think I'm going to go back a step here to the Purple Rain and put some of that out. And I think I might mix some Lilac Meadow in it and get kind of a mix of those two colors. So Purple Rain and Lilac Meadow. And we'll just do a brush mix of those two colors. So I'm going to go into the Lilac Meadow and the Purple Rain. Let's go 2 Purple Rain and 1 Lilac Meadow. And I want to put this along here. Clean up this edge. And that's going to be our bright edge right there. I'm going to make that a little bit dark back there to make it look like it's going around back there. I want to put a little bit of this here. That's 2 of the Purple Rain and 1 Lilac Meadow. There are a few steps that you need to do to fruit to help with that more realistic type look. So they do require a little bit more care to paint. But I think in the end it really brings it together. So we want some lightness here, because that is the part that's tucked behind there. And I'm going to give it a little bit of lightness out here on this outer edge. It won't show up too much at the moment. I need to erase a graphite line here. And that's where I want to put a little bit of that dark purple. So I'm just going to pick it up on this dirty brush here. Add some dark in there. And take the water edge and kind of blend it and smooth it out. And that's going to help that edge a little bit. Okay, we're getting a little bit of dark stuff going on our plum here. I like to take the edge of my brush, kind of tilt my brush up and scoot it into the more tighter areas that you're painting in. I want to lighten this edge right here, so I'm going to take that mix, Lilac Meadow and Royal Purple Rain. And this edge definitely needs some lightness, and I need to bring it down so it looks like it's in front of that other one. Shape it nicely. Give it a nice little shape there. Okay, everybody, I think I'm going to make a couple of changes on this design. This is how I work. I'll be working on a design, and then as I go along, I see something that I'm not just quite happy with, and so I decide to change it. And I haven't worked on this in a couple of days, but when I came back to it today, I'm like, I don't really like the leaf covering that up, so we're just going to paint that over and re-stencil our word. I want this cherry to be bigger, and then I've drawn in, you probably can't see them, I've drawn in a few more cherries, and I also think I'm going to change the leaf color. So a few changes going on here. So the first thing I want to do is to just base coat over this with our base color, which was the morning mist. Now, if you've already painted your leaf in and you've got a little bit of ridge on your leaf, you're going to want to sand that so that when you paint your base coat over it, you don't have any ridges in there and you don't know that there was a leaf painted underneath. So I'm just going to paint that in and then just blend it out a little bit so there's no ridges on there. And I'll come back and probably do that a couple of times. And while this is drying, I'm going to add my other cherries down in here, which was Cad Red. So I'm going to put some of that out. Now we're going to have to remix our color for our stencil, and if we don't get it exactly the same, we're just going to stencil over all the letters. That's how you take care of that. So I want this cherry to be bigger. So I'll take a couple of coats to cover up that purple. And then I have one that's right here in the front. Put a couple of coats on that one, and I've got this one back here. And I haven't decided about stems and leaves on these yet. I just felt like I needed some more cherries going on in here. So I'm going to tuck these two kind of behind the plum here. So I'm going to have one here, and then one that's right behind it, just kind of peeking out right there. So I think that's going to give a little bit better look on here. So I am going to let all these dry and get some second coats back on and retransfer on my leaf, and then we'll come back and I'll show you what color I've decided to paint those leaves, and then finish up our plums here. Okay, I moved my leaf down here. You could have it covering your plum as well, and so this is where I'm going to have it kind of flowing off behind the plum a little bit. So you can see the color that I changed is my favorite green color, which is leaf green. I think I'll use that green tree as my highlight color on my leaves. I think that will work out much better. And I'll probably draw another stem on those extra cherries and maybe add a leaf on top, but we will do that after we have our plums done. So I think that's looking a little bit better, more compositionally wise. It looks much better. So let's work on finishing our plums now. I want to add some darker purple on here. I'm going to add, I wasn't going to get this color out because I didn't want to have so many colors, but it is a transparent purple and I love the color of it, so we're going to give it a shot. Darkening Purple. We're going to work a little bit of this color in to our design. We're going to load our brush for a float. Spritz my palette over here with some water. Remember to use your favorite floating brush. Everybody has a different favorite brush that they like to float with. So let's start down here and add some of this color down here. We'll still be darkening this. I like Darkening Purple because it is a transparent color. And I think it gives a little bit of richness to the purple colors that you can't normally get. And I'm going to go around this. And take my mop brush and very gently mop all of that just to soften and help it blend a little bit. Alright, I'm going to load more. And we're going to go along here. Out just a scooch there. I want to bring this out here, so I'm going to grab more paint and more water so I can pull that out. Needs to be wider here as well. I'm going to put just a little bit of this purple in this area right here. We're going to really darken this area right here in just a minute. Let's go over to our half of a plum. We're going to add some of this beautiful Darkening Purple on here. Let's see if that's dry enough. I want to put a little bit more down there. I'm going to darken this Darkening Purple with some black here in a minute. I think that's looking pretty good. Okay, let's start adding a little bit of dry brushing back on our plums before we add some final shading and detail highlights. So I'm just going to use my little scruffy brush. I'm going to start with some lighter colors and work my way to the darker colors. So I'm going to take my Lilac Meadow and some white and mix them together. Probably 2 whites to 1 Lilac Meadow. Work it into the brush and then take the excess off. We're using a dry brush, dry paper towel here. And we're going to begin adding some highlights in here. We are going to be glazing over this when we're done, so we're still not concentrating too much on the look of this. I'm going to take a little bit of the Lilac Meadow now, and I'm going to add a little bit of Napa Red to it. And we're going to add some red into this a little bit. Almost a pink color. I'm going to add a little bit more red and work it into my brush. It was blending too much with that lighter color. There we go. We want it to be a little bit darker. And we're going to scrub some of this in here, just very lightly. You always want to start out with super light pressure because you don't know how much paint is going to come out of your brush in that given moment when you apply it to your design. So you don't want it to get too carried away. I want that to be a little bit redder through there. So we're really gonna that's looking pretty good. Now I'm going to try and scrub out some of that color. I'm going to grab a little bit of turquoise blue. I'm not sure how that will work out of there. I don't want it to be a dark color, so I think I might just go to a separate brush for the blue. I'll get a separate scruffy brush here for the blue. I'll go back to that other one in just a minute. I want to put a little bit of the turquoise back in here. On camera that looks like a really hard spot there. So we'll try to work that out with a little bit of our purples here in a minute. Okay. I'll go back to my other one, and I'm going to pick up some Darkening Purple on my brush here. I'm going to pick it up a couple of times so it can work some of that other paint out of my brush. And I'm going to scrub a little bit of this in here. Where we can bring out some of our shadow areas just a little bit. You're just very lightly laying some of that color in there, just very gently, scrubby. Okay, so I'm gonna remove this paint out of here. I'm going to go back to our base color, which was Lilac Meadow here. It's going to blend a little bit with that Darkening Purple, but not too awful much. And I want to take this blue down just a little bit and bring it back more to a light purple. So this is where you can kind of play around with your colors and really have fun very gently. We're doing such a gentle pressure here of scrubbing the colors in, just gently scrubbing them in. And anytime that you feel like you've gotten too much, you can go to another color, like one of the other colors we have in here. I'm going to put some of it out, is purple rain. So I'm going to put some of it out here and work it into my brush. It's kind of a medium purple, and then we can tone that blue a little bit. Very lightly. It's just a super, super, super light pressure, because you can go back and forth with all of these colors as many times as you want. I'm going back into some red. I feel like I lost that a little bit. Move a little bit. And just go back in here and put a little bit of that back in. And then we're going to get ready to add our final highlight and shading. So I'm going to clean this brush out. If you have another one, that would be great. If you do not, you might want to clean it out with some hand sanitizer, because that will clean the paint out, and then you can, the brush will dry pretty quickly with just some hand sanitizer cleaning it out. So let me clean my other one out here. We're going to do a final shading on this plum and down here on this one. This outer edge, we're not going to even complete that outer edge until we get the center of this done. So we are going to float on here with a mix of Darkening Purple and Lamp Black. You're going to use just a very small amount of Lamp Black. So let me put some fresh Lamp Black out here and some fresh purple. My purple looks like it's dried up. I think it was kind of thick in my jar here when it came out. Alright, so we have our Darkening Purple, and so I'm going to dip into that. And then I want a tiny little bit of black in there. Maybe just a touch more. It's like a black plum. I've got too much water, so I'm going to wick out the excess water there. It's like a black plum, so it makes this really rich dark purple color. Don't use too much black, or you'll just be putting black down. Try and stay off of your cherry there. So I'm going to keep this down here and not bring it up real super far. Got a lot of paint right there, so I'm going to tap that, kind of blend it out. And we'll go down here, along here, around our cherry. Now you do know whenever you have created a V, right here we have two V's, but we need to round it out and pull it out from that V. That's how you keep your round shape. I think that needed a little bit more black in it. So here is another V right here. So I'm going to push the paint in. I got a little too much paint on my brush. And then I'm going to round it. Shape it, go along this one here. Alright, I'm going to come and mop and soften and very gently, very, very gently blend that out. And we need to come along this center here. darken this, and this area right up here needs to be dark. Alright, let me try and pull that out just a little bit and soften that with my mop brush. To be darker right through here. Now make sure the layer of paint that you put on previously is dry. You know, because if it's not dry, you're just going to lift it right up and you'll be digging a hole in your project. You will be so sad and frustrated. Alright, so here's one of those V's right there. Push the paint in, go around that cherry, and then around it and pull it out a little bit. Take my mop brush and pull and very gently smooth that out. Grab a little bit of water here. I like my cherry kind of lost its shape right there. Okay, we've got a nice shadow going. This right here feels like it needs to be much darker right there, so I might add just a tiny bit more black in there. So right here. And I'm going to walk it out just a little bit. And now I'll take my mop brush and very gently kind of blend a little bit of a hard line right here. So I'll take my water edge, soften that, and blend it out. And there we've got a little bit darker in there. I'm going to put a little bit of this darker stuff right in here. And then we need to add our highlights on here. So I think our shading looks pretty good. That was our Darkening Purple and a little bit of black. Use your mop brush, pull it out if you need to. Softly, very softly blend it. Okay, let's give a little highlight to our plums. I've got a mix of Snow White and a Lilac Meadow. 2 Snow White, 1 Lilac Meadow. We want this edge right here to be a little bit brighter. Up here, I think I'll brighten this as well. Along this top part and down right there, we need a little bit of lightness. Put a little bit just right here on this edge. And this I'm going to bring out just a little bit. On the half of one, we're going to put some along this edge, but we may have to come back and adjust this as we finish up the top because we will have to work on this edge just a little bit. So I'm just going to put a little bit right here and here, but this may end up being adjusted just a little bit as we finish this half plum. So I'm not going to get too carried away with the highlights on this one. Okay. Don't want that to be quite so bright. I'm going to take my Purple Rain and Lilac Meadow and mix it together. And put a little bit of this down here because I don't want that to be a snow white highlight on there. I need to cover this edge just a little bit. Purple Rain right here. Bring that back to a little bit more of a purple color. And walk it out just a little bit into that plum. I think that helps quite a bit. I'm going to do the same thing over here on this edge. A little bit more paint here. Some more water. All right, that was just the Purple Rain. Kind of work that in there just a little bit. Okay, I'm going to have to come back with my white and lilac meadow mix because I covered up one of my highlights here. So it's 2 white, 1 lilac meadow, and right here. I want that highlight to be close to the edge right there, like a little reflected highlight. Can come onto the plum just a little bit. Okay, I'm going to grab just Snow White on my brush now and put a little bit along this edge. A little bit here. I'm not happy with how the top of this looks right here. I have to come back and do that. I want a little bit right there. Grab a smaller brush here, see if I can fix that area. This purple up here. That's the Purple Rain. Kind of taking that white down just a little bit. Okay. Let's I think we're going to wash over this with Darkening Purple now, and then we'll come back and stipple some white in there for some texture and maybe a little bit more of the teal. So let's get some Darkening Purple out. And we're just going to create a wash of this. So I'm going to take some water and grab some purple and bring it over here. And we're just going to create a little puddle of really wet paint here. It's mostly water, a little bit of paint. You're just tinting the paint. And then we're just going to brush this over all of our plum. Even over the highlight, it's not going to take it down. I'm going to bring this back to a beautiful purple color. So pretty. Okay, we want that to dry and then we're going to stipple on it. Okay, I've got a couple of small stipple brushes here. I don't know which one will do the best job here. This one's really stiff. This one's not as stiff. This one is a Betty Bird. And this one is a Royal Majestic. Pretty sure I got this one at Hobby Lobby. Not sure where I got that one. I've had it for a really long time. But you just want something that you can get some really soft stippling with. So I'm going to try the Betty Bird one. I'm going to load some white in my brush and offload it. I'm not sure this is going to give me as much texture as I want to have in here. So I'm going to load it again. Usually you have to load your brush a couple times to get the paint actually into the brush. And then we're just going to stipple and kind of scrub. You know how plums look. They have that white powdery stuff on them. It gives them the kind of look that they have. And we just want to do a little bit of this. Don't get too awful carried away. If you feel like you get too much white, then just go into your Purple Rain and tap some of that back in and take it down just a little bit. Put a little bit down here on our half plum. Just a little stippling and scrubbing. That's all I'm doing because this is a softer bristle brush. Now, see, I feel like I've gotten too much, so I'm going to clean my brush out and go into my Royal Purple, or Purple Rain, not Royal Purple, that'd be too dark. Purple Rain. And I'm going to tap some of this over some of that white. Just a few places. Maybe go into some of my red or turquoise and add some of that in here. Grab some red. You could also wash over your plum with some of this Napa Red. It's a pretty transparent color and it would make a beautiful wash over your plums as well. Give them more of the red plum look. So that's the Napa Red. I'm going to grab a little bit of turquoise and see if I can work that into my brush and work out some of that Napa. So I can maybe scrub just a little bit of turquoise in there. Just a light little amount. Let's not go too crazy with this. plum's looking pretty good. A little bit of this up here. I really like that Napa red on there, so I might do just a tiny bit more of that. Remember, you're doing very, very light layers here. Okay, and again, you can wash over this if you want to with either Napa red or with Darkening Purple. I think that's going to finish up, especially this plum. I think it's okay. I'm going to work on our, well, actually I'm going to work on the center of this. This won't take us too long, and then we'll work on our cherries. But as we build each piece of fruit and thing in this, if we look at this and it feels like it needs something else, we will definitely come back and add it. But I think that is going to finish out the big plum, except for the stem and the leaf. I drew another little leaf right here, but I'm not sure I'm going to add it in, so we shall see how this works out. But for now, we're ready to move to the center of this half plum. Okay, let's work on this. Now we're going to take our Napa red and side load for a float. Napa red's going to be pretty bright, but we'll be toning a lot of this down. We want to put this color in the center out here, down here where the pit goes. There's no pit in it, but we're going to darken this with some Napa red and kind of walk it out and let it soften as it gets to the other side. No hard buildup of paint here. We don't want, we want to keep it soft. Let me grab my mop brush. We want to keep it pretty soft. To begin with, we will definitely be building this as we go. I'm trying to remember what the inside of a plum looks like. Okay, I'm going to take just that Napa red, which I have right here, and I think I'll put a little bit of our Purple Rain in with it, just to purple it up just a little bit. I want this a very sheer float, so I'm letting the water in my brush blend with it and really lighten up that paint. And we're going to take this around the outside edge here and soften that. Lighten it up with some water just a little bit more. We'll go around this edge. This edge is going to be a little bit darker than this edge. So when we repeat on the first edge that we did, we may not repeat on this edge, because I want that edge to be just a little bit lighter. But I do want some of this color right here next to this, and then coming down and coming, kind of forming that pit a little bit where that pit area is, and we'll do it on this side. That side will be highlighted, I think. Just start forming that little bit of a pit area. Now the inside of this was just done with Napa red, and then the outside edges, I mixed a little bit of the Purple Rain with it, and then used my mop brush to soften as I went so that it just gently smooths out as we go. And then also with that mix, I think I'm going to start creating some little line things in here, like, you know how when the pit comes out, you see all these little lines that are down in there where the pit kind of sat. So I'm just up on the chisel edge. I still only have a side load of that color that we used for our float and just created a little bit of texture down inside the center. Okay, our plum's looking pretty good. We're gonna start adding a highlight here in this yellow area. So we're gonna take our moon yellow and do a 2 moon yellow to 1 white. And we're gonna put a little bit inside the pit area so we can kind of start making that look like it goes down in there. Still, to me, it looks like the actual pit. So however it comes about, whether it looks like the pit itself, I really need to darken down in there, or the like it's empty, is going to be just fine. So we're going to go along this side, the dark side of the pit area, on the very top of the plum. I want to put a little bit out here in the center of this side. This is our mix of 2 moon yellow and 1 let's see, do we need to go all the way up there? We're going to go all the way to that center line that we created there. And then we want some up here, that area. That was our moon yellow and white. I'm going to come in with a little bit. I'm not really sure what color to use here. Not Napa Red, that's too bright. Let's go with some milk chocolate. Got a little bit of Napa Red on my brush because I just wiped it off. I need this edge inside here to be a little bit more defined. Not sure I like it quite that defined, so I'm going to take some of my moon yellow and tone that down. Alright, I'm going to take some Snow White now and go along here. And I want to go along this edge a little bit. And I'm going to put some out here. Up here next to the line and down here next to the line. I'm going to put some little lines in here with the white. I don't have much paint here on my brush at all, so it's not leaving too much in there. I really need to darken down in there to make it look like it is pushed down in there. So for that, we're going to mix some paint here. Okay, I don't think I'm going to use the cad yellow after all, unless I need it on the leaves later, because right now I'm not wanting it on this meaty area. But I do need this darker, so we're going to take our milk chocolate and a little bit of lamp black and mix that together and make like a soft black color. If you have soft black, you can just grab that, but we want it to be a little bit more on the brown side. And we're going to float down in here. deepen that. And get that a little bit darker in there. And then I want to wash just a little bit of the Napa Red in there. Ooh, a lot of the Napa Red. In there. Remove the excess off my brush here. Kind of spread it around. I'm going to take my mop brush and very gently mop that. I want to have that little bit of red tint down in there. And then I want a little bit more Darkening Purple on this edge. I want to bring it out just a scooch. So work it into your brush till it's a nice soft color. Just smooth it out, blend it just a little bit. Okay, let's work on the edge up here. Actually, I'm going to repeat my white highlight real quick because I feel like it kind of got lost. Just a little bit, just with the corner of my brush, especially over here on this side. Kind of brighten that up just a little bit. All right, let's finish the edge around this half plum. So I'm going to take my what color is my base color here? It's Lilac Meadow, but I also want to have out my Purple Rain. I think we're going to mix those two together. So let me get a little bit of each one of these out. And we're just going to brush mix. Just dip into each one of them and brush mix. That's going to get a nice color here. And we're going to go along this outer edge. This color. Okay, I took a little break from this project and was studying the photos that I took of it because I always take pictures to see how it's looking. And I have decided that this has too much blue in it. So I'm going to take my Darkening Purple and my Royal Purple and kind of mix them together on my brush. Probably a little bit more Darkening Purple than Royal Purple, because it's a little more transparent. And I'm just mixing them in my little scruffy brush here that's dry. And now I'm removing excess paint out of my brush. And I'm going to go in here and scrub just very lightly some purple back in here. Just a little bit over some of that teal blue. The teal was just standing out way more than I wanted it to in my pictures, so I'm just going to scrub a little bit of paint onto those. It's just going to slightly mute it down a little bit, and again you can go over this and wash in another layer of Darkening Purple if you want, trying to stay out of your really bright highlight right there. And I feel like I need to tap some of the white back in here. Very lightly. Don't scrub too hard. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm gonna leave it there for now. I'm gonna take a picture of this here in a minute and see how it looks in the photograph. I think think it's looking pretty good. I have this outside edge to do on this right here. And we're going to do that with a, I think I'll use a detail liner because I want to get a thin line around that. I'm just going to take a little tiny bit of white here. It's mixing a little bit with that purple that's on my oops, that was just a little bit too much right there. So, back into my purples. And give a little, take that down just a little bit. Okay. All right, that's looking good. So let's grab a detail liner, and we're going to go into our Royal Purple, I think is the color I want to use for out here on this outer edge. So you're going to thin it down with a little bit of water and load your brush. Make sure you don't have any excess water. I need to clean some purple up out there. And then we're just going to very lightly remove some of the paint off of my bristles, but I removed too much, I think. Just very lightly skim along this outside edge to kind of show the edge of the peel out here. Alright, so I've got this purple over here on my board. Apparently I had it on my hand or something. So I'm just going to take my white eraser and erase that away. You can do that as long as your paint hasn't cured, which it hasn't. Okay, let's move on to our cherries. Our cherries should be fairly easy to do, so I am going to do a couple of cherries, finish them, and go off camera and finish the rest because the rest of them are exactly the same. Excuse me. So I think I'll finish this grouping of 3 right here in the middle. So we are going to start with some, let's see, we use Napa Red on our thing, so let's try the Napa Red. I also have Deep Burgundy out on my palette, or in my paint kit here. I'll see which one works best. We'll also be probably mixing some black in this along the way. But for now we want to just separate our cherries. And we're using the Napa Red. And this one's in front here. That's one of those V's, so we'll scoop it and round it. And then I want to do the bottom of this one. Okay, so that's a good start to those. I also want to make the area where the stem goes in. So I have this one with the stem area right here. So we're just going to do like a little, maybe not quite that big. That's a little bit bigger than what I want. So let me just remove that. I don't want it to be quite that big. And I shall try that again. We just need a little, well, a little bit more paint on my brush. We just need a little area right there where the stem is going to come out. And then this one I'm going to put here. It's almost like a little C, but it's a very tight little C. It's not anything that is great big. And then I'm thinking I might have a stem come up and join these two here. This one here doesn't necessarily have to have a indent, because it could be flipped over and laying where you can't see it. Like this one probably will be that way, but this one I have the indent where the stem goes right there, so it's kind of turned down. But I think this one I'm going to leave it like it's rolled toward us. Let me grab some black on my palette here. Now I'm going to mix a little bit of Napa Red and my black. And it's going to be a tiny little bit of black. Grab some water there. So there's my Napa Red, and we're going to get a little bit of black. A little bit more red. We're going to make this like rich, deep, almost burgundy color. And we are going to deepen our shading with this color. And I'm going to mop that. Grab my mop brush before it dries. Teeny tiny little bit of black mixed in there. I don't want this coming out looking like black paint, so if it's getting way too dark, then you need to put a lot more of that Napa Red in there. We will darken them up a little bit more, but we want to build this slowly. We don't want this to come up too quickly. Okay, that's a V right there, so I'm going to push it in the corner and round it out. And we'll do our little indents here. Just a little bit in there. Don't get too carried away with that. So our first layer was Napa Red only. Then our second layer was Napa Red with a little bit of Lamp Black. Okay, I'm trying to look for a color mix that will work well for a highlight here, so I don't have to get another color out. I pulled Cad Yellow out earlier because I was going to use it on that, and I still, since I'm going to use it over here, I might glaze a little bit of it over there. But I'm going to take my Cad Red and my Cadmium Yellow, and I'm going to mix 2 yellow to 1 Cad Red. Let's see. I had 2 Cad Red to 1 yellow here, and wasn't quite happy with it. I'm going to be glazing over these with some red here, like I did on the plums. So I need a little bit of a bright color on here. So that is 2 cad yellow to 1 cadmium red. I like my cherries to be this dark, rich red. So we're going to be adding another layer on here of that mix of Napa Red and Lamp Black. We want to make this a really rich color. So if you need to add just a little bit more black in there to make it a little bit more rich, then go ahead and do that. Just don't turn it black. It's still got to look like a deep burgundy color. Without looking like you're making the color black. I think this really makes the cherries look more realistic and getting that deep, rich red in here. And you can see I'm walking it into the cherry a little bit. We want to have that highlight, but we don't want the highlight to be the whole cherry. So that little highlight underneath there is going to help that dark color from becoming so concentrated. I'm going to mix a little bit more here on my brush. This one here, a little bit more water. And I'm going to bring that up onto the cherry just a little bit. Very gently mop that. This one I think needs to be a little bit darker down through here. I'll just walk that up just a little bit. Really make the cherry look more red. Oops. Hard line there. Okay. I'm going to try this one again. I don't like how that looks right there. Looking pretty nice right there. I'm going to clean my brush because the paint was coming over way too far on my brush. And then pick up a little bit more of that mix and go in here. Just a little bit. And then we're going to brighten our highlight. So I'm going to take my cad yellow and my cad red. All right. Thought about mixing a different color in there, but I don't think I like that. Let me I was trying to mix cad red and cad yellow together, but it is not doing the color that I like. So I was trying to do Napa red and cad yellow. But that's not working out. So we're going to stick with the cad yellow and the cadmium red. And get that kind of peachy orange color. And do a second little highlight on here. Your highlights get smaller as you go, so I'm not doing as much of a highlight with this one. Just trying to keep it concentrated in a few key places. So now we're ready to glaze over these. Actually, before we do a little glaze, I'm going to put just some straight cad yellow on here. And when we glaze over it, that will push that back just a little bit. Let's take our Napa red and make a wash of this color. So it's mostly water. You're just tinting water. So you've got a lot of water, a little bit of paint. Just tint that water. And then we're going to wash over everything. I like to use cherry red on my cherries a lot. Obviously, because it's cherry red, but I don't want to get another color out, so we are just going to use the colors that we have, and so that's going to be Napa red. If you feel like it's too much on your highlight, you can just touch that back with your finger and remove it. We've still got our bright white highlight to put on there, but we want this red on here to really make those cherries begin to pop. Okay. And you can glaze on here as many times as you want to get them the color that you want. And so I need to get that dry so that we can put our bright white highlight on here. Okay, I've just side loaded a tiny little bit on the corner of this brush, which needs a little bit more water. So I've got just a little bit of white right there, and we're just going to kiss a little highlight on here. Maybe a little reflective highlight over here. And here. Just a touch here. This is a reflective highlight. These smaller areas here. And then this one I can do a little bit. I get a little bit more water on my brush. So I use the clean edge of my brush to really narrow out that highlight so it doesn't take over. Okay, so we've got some nice little highlights. I think this one I might bring out just a little bit. See if I like that. I may not like that at all. No, I don't like that. I prefer the little bit smaller highlight, so just on this one. Normally on my cherries I like a little bit of a brighter highlight, but I think that's going to work out fine for these. So you can just kind of judge where you want to highlight, and don't let it get carried away. It's just a little kiss of light on there. So that's how we're going to do all the rest of the cherries. So it doesn't take up so much camera time. I'm going to go off camera and finish these other cherries, and we're going to come back and work on our leaves and our stems. Okay, I have all my cherries done here. So now we're going to work on the stems on the cherries. And so these stems are mostly green, but we're going to paint them in with some milk chocolate first. So we're going to make a fat little thing up here at the top. Now you'll want to use a detail liner. I've got a 1 round here. And then we're going to pull. We want a very thin stem coming into those cherries. We're going to paint over that with some green here in a minute, but we need the brown to be at the very tip, and so I've got one here. And I'm going to pull this stem. Well, that doesn't quite look right. So I'm going to take that off. That stem is coming out crooked, and I don't want that, so let's take that off. Not really sure how I drew that on there. That was crazy. Okay, so we're going to have this stem coming from the center here, and it's going to curve by those. And then this one can come up to meet it here. And a little fat, oh, hang on. And a little fat area. So your line drawing will be correct. My line drawing was not correct. So, and I'm going to darken up just a little bit on the left side of this one with this milk chocolate. Darken this just a little bit. And now we're going to add some leaf green on here. So load your little brush with some leaf green. We're going to flip it around so we can pull towards us, and we're going to come out of the cherry and work our way almost all the way up to the end of the stem. The brown was just there to give the foundation for the green. Make the green not be quite so bright. It will tone it down just a little bit. Try and stay on your line that you've got there. I know this is not how I originally drew it, but my lines were really cattywampus. So I want to go over that green again. Just lightly go over it. You don't want to be putting a lot of paint on here. You're just kind of skimming over that brown. We don't want to see the brown really, but if we do, I wouldn't worry about it, because if you try to work at it and get all that brown covered up, then you probably will end up not being too happy with it. Okay, so we've got a couple of stems there. Okay, I want to highlight on them, so I'm going to take my green. I'm not going to clean it out. I'm going to go into some cad yellow and mix that in there. Just pick a little bit up on my brush and mix it with my green. And I'm going to highlight on here, mostly down the center of these. And I don't have much water in my brush right now, but if you need to pick up water, if you are pushing too hard on your brush and making everything too fat, then pick up a little bit of water. It's okay. beginnings of our stems. Now the brown part on the stem, I want to darken that just a little bit, so I'm going to take a little bit of black and mix it with some that milk chocolate. Make this really dark brown, black brown. I'm going to tap this on here. Just tap it on that edge. While I have it on my brush, I'm going to pull some of this up on the bottom of this one. Okay. We want to add a highlight, a bright highlight with some white. So we're going to pull a little bit, just a small highlight. I'm going to tap a little bit onto the end right there. Got too much water in my brush. Okay, so then we'll go over to this one and a little bit of white. And tap a little bit up here. Okay. So the last thing we want to do here is put a small little float on here. I'm going to grab a small flat if I have any out here. Because this is going to be a teeny tiny little float and you don't want a whole lot of paint on your brush, but we're going to go into some black and work it into your brush just a little bit, and we're going to put the black. See, I've got too much water in my brush. I'm going to put the black right here. Set that stem down inside that cherry, right there at the base. Just a little bit of black. Putting it right where the green is. Just a little tapping kind of motion to make it look like the stem is going down in there. And then we're also going to take a little bit of this black and put it up here. Sorry. Up here underneath that brown part of the stem. Just a little bit. I have me on camera for either one of those. Sorry about that. Just a little bit up here. Just right underneath that, where the stem meets. And this one here looks like it needs just a touch more brown on it. So I'm going to tap some brown back in there. So we want that little bit of a highlight on there, but we don't want it to fill in our brown area. So that's the stems on our cherries. They are pretty easy stems to do. No stressing out about those at all. So let's move up to finish our stem up here on our plum and do the leaf on it. Okay, hopefully I kept you on camera enough for those stems that you've got them. I'm really sorry about getting you off camera. Okay, so we're going to finish off the stem here. We're just going to tap a little bit of white and pull it down this edge. Nothing dramatic. I'm going to pick up a little bit of milk chocolate because that got a little bit out of control there. I don't want it to be very wide, just a little bit of a highlight right there. Okay, so now we're ready to work on the leaf, or all the leaves will be actually done the same. So we're going to take our leaf green, and there's no need to get another color out. We're going to mix a little bit of black in with our leaf green. Just side load for a float, so pick up green and a tiny little bit of black. A little bit too much green there on my brush. And then we're just going to darken that green right there. Just make a nice little evergreen kind of color, and we're going to float right in here with this color. Okay, we're going to put some, let me get my brush turned the right way. We're going to put some back here, come down this edge a little bit, about halfway, and then bring it along this back edge. We're going to go at the base of the leaf. Brush keeps drying out so quickly. I got my ceiling fan on. It's always hot in here in the summer. In the winter it's freezing cold. So I've got my ceiling fan on and I think it's just drying out. I feel like I need to have like a gallon of water inside my bristles here. Alright, so we're going to go along the back here, pick up a little bit more green. Mix that in so it's not quite so dark with the first layer. And we'll just pull that a little bit. I'm going to let that dry before I pull the vein in there. So we'll go down here to these. I'm going to try and use this ginormous brush on these. So I went ahead, I had not put a second coat on these, so I put a second coat on these two, but not this one. This one's underneath. I left it underneath the stem, and then I just painted this one right on top. So I'm going to float some dark color at the base here. I'm going to put a little bit here where this goes underneath the stem. Oops. And go to a smaller brush here. I'm using a really big brush, but I'm just tilting up on the edge of the brush here. Again, you're off camera. I am so sorry. I moved my camera like I told you, and now my turntable has to be like 6 to 8 inches away from me, where before I could keep it really close. So I have got to learn to adjust. And I apologize again for it being off camera. Hopefully I can figure that all out pretty soon. So we just did a quick float of a mix of leaf green and a little bit of black to just darken that green a little bit, so it's not the same color as the leaf green that we painted it in. So that was just our first shading there. So we're going to get ready to do a second float, and we're going to mix a little bit more black in that mix. Make it more like a black green. Okay. So I'm going to go along the back here again. I think it could use just a little bit more black in it. That's not quite dark enough for me. I'm going to put a little bit back here in this corner. Okay, we'll go back underneath here. Keep this a little bit tighter. Don't let it come out as far. That's the really dark, shadowy area under there. Okay, we're going to come down here to these little ones, and another nice little float on here. Underneath, we're going to make that look like it's underneath and behind. Just using the water edge of my brush to just kind of smooth that out. And then this top edge here, be darker, and then right back there. Okay, so that's the darker color for our leaves. I'm going to pick up a little bit more green in that mix, and we're going to create our vein here. Okay, we'll bring it down here. And these can have veins or they can not have veins. Completely up to you. Depends on how much detail you want to put on these. But I'm just going to stay up on the chisel edge and just pull a little bit of a vein down these. I'm not going to worry too much about them, you know, really how they look, because, you know, they're such small leaves. We're not really going to see a ton of detail on them. Okay, I want to take this little white graphite line off if I can. So we're going to grab our green tree, which is what we were going to paint them, base them in with earlier. I'm so glad I changed that. We're going to put that on our palette. And I'm going to mix it with my leaf green. So I'm going to do a little bit of water in my brush. It feels like it needs water. I'm going to do a, let's see. I'm going to do a 2 green tree to 1 leaf green. And see how that looks. I might do an equal mix. Let's just do an equal mix here. I think that's going to be too bright if I do it the other way. So we want to take this and just go a little bit along this edge right here. And I'm just going to walk some out into the leaf a little bit. We're going to also go along this edge. I'm up on the very tippy toe of my brush here. You can go to a smaller brush. Don't be afraid to do that. I want a little bit right here and a little bit right here. Take the water edge and kind of smooth it out and blend it out. Make it nice. And then down here, we're just going to go along the opposite edge that we put the shading. A little bit more on my brush here. It'll be the opposite edge and mostly the tip here. I have to clean that up when I get done here. Okay. I'm going to wash the brush out because I don't want any more of that leaf green in there. I want just the green tree now. And we're going to put that along here. And along here. And I need to highlight on my vein. I didn't get that done. So I'll have to go back to my mix and highlight my center vein there. I'm not going to worry too much about my mix on the vein here. Just a little bit on the tip, and then I'm just going to put a tiny little bit right next to the vein on the right side. Grab that mix so I can go along my center vein up here, and I'm going to grab a little bit more water, and I'm going to put a little bit right here next to that. I want it to fade away at both ends. Okay, I'm going to wipe my brush off since I just need a small amount of paint, and I'm going to go into the green tree. It's a green tree, and put that right there. I want it to fade away as well. A little bit more there, and I'm going to darken the vein part here. Right here, I want it to be a little bit darker next to that light color. Okay. All right, we just need to add our stems on here. Then we're going to do a little bit of some gold around the borders. You don't have to do that, but I think it's going to add, and then we need to shade underneath here. I think we might shade underneath here first. But let's add our stems on here now. Okay, we're going to mix our leaf green and a little bit of black. Make a darker green, but not super dark. And just use a small round brush. I'm going to have it kind of come from behind the stem there. Just lightly bring it around. I need a little bit of water because my paint is not flowing. And we're going to bring the stem right into our leaf. And to make that just a little bit fatter. And then down here we can add some little stems on here, just, well, mostly on this one. This one we can't really see unless we bring one around. And I don't like that. So I'm just going to keep it like it's connected here or something. I'm not going to worry about bringing any kind of stem onto that one. Either one of those, because they're like connected right there where they are on the so this was the only thing that was going to concern me. I'm going to add a little bit of brown into that because it's such a long way to go to that leaf, and I didn't know if I needed to add some another leaf on there or not. I was just completely unsure of that whole thing right there. When I moved my leaf, it kind of changed the position of it, so that changed a little bit of everything. I'm not sure that they have quite that long of a stem, but I think we will leave it right there. Let's shade around the bottom really quick, and then we're going to do some gold detail work on it. So around the bottom, I want to put that kind of soft black color. So I'm going to take my brown and a little bit of black and mix like a soft black color. Soft black is a brown, has a brown tint to it. We could go with a purple or something like that if you wanted to, but we're just going to put some, wipe a little bit of that off my brush. I want it to be really soft on here, especially at first. We'll just start adding a little bit of a layer of shading under here. You want to make sure that it's good and dry, so don't tell which side my paint's on here. Don't get too carried away by getting the second float on here. You got to let the first one dry. And then the second one, you really want to just go right close next to everything. And then the areas where they like one is on top of another one or right next to another one, you want to put just a little bit more for that shadowy area in there. Those little V areas. You want to get a little bit of color in those areas. Darker color. Keep water in your brush, because if you don't, you're just basically painting, and we are just floating here. So you can always take the water edge and move that paint and soften it around. And I like for mine to look choppy. I don't like for it to be super crazy smooth. I don't think that looks as good, but you paint it in however you like it. So we got a nice little shadowy stuff going on underneath it, and I'm going to take just a little bit of this color and put it up here. Okay, just a little bit of that mix of black and brown. Okay, I think that's got some nice shading on there. That looks really good. So we have all of our fruit done. I think it looks pretty good. Needs to be a little bit more shaped there. Okay, so we're going to get ready to do some scroll work on here. Now, first, you can do this or not do it. You can leave it just like it is. You could shade around the edges if you wanted to, but I think I want to put maybe, let me think about this, a little bit of gold on here. Okay, I have decided to just kind of float around or shade around the outside edges. So I've mixed the color that we used here, but I made it just slightly darker by adding a little bit more black to the mix. Okay, so now I'm going to take a damp sponge here and just load a little bit on here. I need a little bit more water, so I'm going to spritz my plate here, get a little water, and I've just worked it onto the edge of my sponge here. Doesn't that fruit look delicious? Now, like I said, you can leave it just like this. This surface is available on my website, and I'm just going to antique the edges a little bit. Or maybe a lot. That seems like a lot. So I'm going to go to the opposite side of my sponge that's just damp, so I can remove a little bit of that. And then flip it back over, and we're going to work some of this along here. And you can go a little bit darker than this for your antiquing around the edges. I think it could be just a tad bit darker. I think my letters are darker than this, so I think I need to add a little bit more purple and black into the mix here. So I got a little bit going there. I'm going to add a little bit more purple. Ooh, or a lot of purple, goodness gracious. And a little bit more black. Like I said, you do not have to do this part of it. You can leave it just the way that it is. I'm making just it's like a dirty purple color here. So again, I'm going to pick some up on my sponge, grab a little bit of water down here on this edge, and then we'll come back in and just lightly age all around this. You could actually skip the bottom if you wanted to, because like that, it's going to get right into your design. And then you're going to cover up all that pretty stuff. So, that's why I would have taken it off. Be careful doing this, because you can remove all that beautiful shadow that you just put on there. So I think I'm going to keep this just around the top. And sides. Take it off from down here. Just about messed up my shading. Spritz that because that's already dry. I'm just making a mess of this. I'm going to scrub that so I can get it off of there. There we go. That's much better. Okay, I really made that an old looking sign, didn't I? Okay, like I said, you can do that or not do it, completely up to you. You know, whatever you like. But I think that kind of sets it off just a little bit. Scrub that with the wet side and blend it out a little bit. I don't want my letters to be covered up. Okay, I felt like that was just the biggest mess ever, but it is so done now. And I'm pretty happy with that fruit on there. This month is Paint Your Favorite Thing to Paint on Toll Town, and so this is my favorite thing to paint, fruit. So I hope it hasn't been difficult for you. I hope that you have enjoyed it and will paint this and post your pictures and just have a good time with it. Don't stress out about it. It's just fruit. The only thing about fruit is that it requires a few layers. So if you're willing to put in the time, then I think you're going to just really love how it turns out. The very first fruit I ever painted was grapes, and the teacher applied probably 15 to 20 layers of paint on those grapes. And I am sitting there, you know, because I hadn't been painting a super long time this style of painting, and I'm just thinking, seriously, when are these going to be done? So, you know, I did have a few layers on the plums, but, you know, that kind of matters in the end with fruit, although I decided right then and there, if I ever painted another piece of fruit, it was not going to have 15 to 20 layers on it. I just felt like that was ridiculous. So, I think, you know, after 3 or 4 layers, it was great. So, you know, do whatever feels good to you. If just a couple of layers, I would say a minimum of 3 layers on the plums. But if after 3 layers of, you know, shading and scrubbing in some color, you like it, then just go with it. It's your fruit. So just have fun with it, everybody. And thanks so much for painting with me. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.